Maple Creek Estates appeared picture-perfect from every angle. Uniformly trimmed hedges lined driveways leading to houses painted in HOA-approved shades of beige, taupe, and gray. American flags fluttered on designated holidays. Basketball hoops folded down when not in use. It was exactly the kind of place I had wanted when searching for a new start with my son Alex 2 years ago. For 15 years, I had served as the head of the Juvenile Crimes Division for our county. My days were filled with case files documenting the worst of humanity against children. The job required a certain detachment, a professional distance that allowed me to function effectively in the face of often unspeakable cruelty. Home needed to be different. Home needed to be safe. Alex was 16 and had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy at birth. His condition affected his mobility and balance, but not his sharp mind or determined spirit. Most days were good, but there were difficult ones too, when his muscles would spasm uncontrollably or his anxiety would spike. That was where Bella came in. Bella was a 2-year-old golden retriever, specifically trained as a service animal for Alex. She helped steady him physically when walking became difficult and provided deep pressure therapy during anxiety attacks. With Bella at his side, Alex had gained confidence and independence that had transformed his life and mine. Watching them together brought me more joy than anything else in this world. Our first 6 months in Maple Creek had been uneventful. I nodded politely to neighbors during my morning runs. Alex attended the local high school where he maintained honor roll grades despite his physical challenges. We received the occasional form letter about minor infractions like leaving the garbage bins out past collection day. Nothing unusual for suburban life governed by a homeowners association. That changed when Karen Simpson was elected HOA president. Karen was in her 50s, with rigidly styled blonde hair and a perpetual expression of disapproval etched into her face. She carried a clipboard everywhere and wore polo shirts embroidered with Maple Creek HOA, as if it were a law enforcement uniform. I first encountered Karen officially during one of Alex and Bella's afternoon walks through the community garden. I had joined them that day, enjoying the rare opportunity to leave work at a reasonable hour. She approached with quick, deliberate steps, clipboard already raised like a shield. "Excuse me, but dogs are not permitted in the community garden," Karen said, pointing to a small sign I had never noticed before. "It is clearly stated in Section 5, Paragraph 3 of the Community Guidelines." "This is a service animal," I explained calmly. "Bella is specially trained to assist my son with his disability." Karen looked Bella up and down with obvious skepticism. "It looks like a regular dog to me. Do you have documentation? The HOA requires proper documentation for any exceptions." I maintained my composure. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, service animals are permitted in all public spaces. We do have documentation, which I would be happy to provide, though legally we are not required to do so. Alex stood quietly beside me, his hand instinctively tightening on Bella's harness. I could sense his discomfort growing. This was exactly the kind of confrontation that triggered his anxiety. "Rules are rules," Karen replied, writing something on her clipboard. "I will need to see that documentation by tomorrow, or you will receive a formal violation notice." As she walked away, I noticed Alex's breathing had quickened. Bella immediately pressed against his leg, providing the steady pressure that helped calm him. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. "Do not worry, buddy. Everything is fine. We have all the proper paperwork." What I did not realize then was that this small confrontation was just the beginning. Karen Simpson had found her new crusade, and somehow, my son and his service dog had become her targets. The peaceful neighborhood I had chosen as our sanctuary was about to reveal its true nature. The following weeks brought a noticeable shift in our neighborhood experience. What began as a single confrontation in the garden evolved into something far more persistent and troubling. Karen seemed to materialize wherever Alex and Bella went. The community pool, the walking paths, even the sidewalk in front of our house became stages for her impromptu inspections. Despite providing copies of Bella's service animal certification, training documentation, and even a letter from Alex's neurologist explaining the medical necessity of his service dog, Karen remained unmoved. She created a new pet documentation committee and appointed herself as chair. "Your paperwork has been reviewed, but the committee has concerns," Karen informed me one evening, appearing at my door unannounced. "The documentation does not specifically address the need for the animal to access all community areas. Until further review, the restrictions remain in place." I stood in my doorway, momentarily speechless. In my professional life, I dealt with bureaucratic obstruction daily, but this deliberate misapplication of rules struck me as something more targeted. The Americans with Disabilities Act supersedes HOA regulations, I stated firmly. Federal law is quite clear on this matter. Karen's expression hardened. Maple Creek Estates has its own legal counsel, and they advise that our community has certain rights to establish standards. Perhaps you should review Section 8 of the revised community guidelines. She handed me a thick packet. These were approved last week. After she left, I reviewed the new guidelines with growing concern. The revised rules included restrictions on non-human companions in recreational areas, limitations on what constituted a legitimate service animal versus an emotional support pet, and requirements for additional insurance coverage for residents with special accommodations. None of these would hold up legally, but fighting them would require time and energy that Alex did not need to expend. He had already begun to withdraw, becoming reluctant to use the community amenities he had once enjoyed. "Dad, can we just walk in the neighborhood behind ours?" Alex asked one Saturday morning. "The paths are not as nice, but no one bothers us there." His question broke my heart. My son, who already faced daily physical challenges, was now being made to feel unwelcome in his own community. Bella sensed his distress, pressing her body against his leg in response. "No, buddy, this is our neighborhood too," I replied gently. "We have every right to be here." What I did not share with Alex was my growing awareness of Karen's broader pattern of behavior. During a brief conversation with our neighbor Thomas, an elderly widower, I learned that Karen had cited him 3 times for medical equipment visible from the street, his oxygen tank delivery. Maria Rodriguez, whose family lived at the corner, mentioned that Karen had attempted to ban their annual Three Kings Day celebration as excessively cultural and not in keeping with community aesthetics. Each story revealed the same troubling pattern. Karen wielded HOA authority against the most vulnerable residents, those least likely to mount effective resistance. I decided to address the issue formally. I submitted a detailed letter to the HOA board outlining the legal protections for service animals and requesting clarification on the new policies. Weeks passed without response. My follow-up emails disappeared into administrative limbo. Meanwhile, new signs appeared throughout the community, pet restrictions strictly enforced, and report violations to HOA management. Though the language was general, the timing left little doubt about their intended target. Alex's anxiety worsened. Once confident walking with Bella through the neighborhood, he now texted me multiple times during their walks, reporting Karen's presence nearby or new signs that had appeared. Bella, sensing his distress, became more vigilant and less relaxed in her service duties. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Alex found a note tucked under our windshield wiper. Final notice regarding unauthorized animal access. Consequences will follow for continued violations. Fines begin at $500 occurrence. The note was unsigned but unmistakable in its origin and intent. When Alex showed it to me that evening, I noticed his hand was shaking. Bella pressed against him, doing her job even as she had become the target of this inexplicable campaign. I felt something shift inside me as I looked at my son's worried face. I had maintained professional distance, following proper channels and procedures as was my habit from years in public service. But the fear in my son's eyes made one thing abundantly clear: proper channels were failing us. The time for a different approach had arrived. "Do not worry," I told Alex, my voice calm despite the anger building inside me. "This stops now." I did not yet know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The call came at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. A juvenile trafficking case had broken wide open, with 4 minors recovered from a motel just outside the county line. As head of the division, my presence was required immediately for coordination with federal authorities who had been tracking the ring for months. Alex was home from school, a teacher development day. He sat at the kitchen table working on calculus homework. Bella settled contentedly at his feet. At 17, he was responsible and cautious, particularly inside our home. I hesitated nonetheless. "I have to go in, buddy. Emergency at work," I explained, already gathering my keys and badge. "I will probably be late. There is lasagna in the fridge for dinner." Alex nodded without looking up from his textbook. "We will be fine, Dad. Go save the world." "Bella needs a quick walk soon," I reminded him. "Just a short one around the block should be enough." "I know her schedule better than you do," Alex replied with teenage certainty. "We will stick to the regular path. No community gardens or forbidden zones." His attempt at humor about our ongoing HOA situation reassured me. I kissed the top of his head and headed for the door. "Call if you need anything. Anything at all." "Dad, I am 16, not 6, he called after me. "We will be fine." Those were the last normal moments of our life in Maple Creek Estates. 3 hours later, deep in coordination meetings with FBI agents, I felt my phone vibrate repeatedly in my pocket. 3 calls in succession from our neighbor, Ellen McKenzie. Something was wrong. I stepped out immediately. "James, you need to come home right now." Ellen's voice was tight with restrained emotion. "There has been an incident with Alex and Bella. They are both very upset but physically okay. I am with them at your house." "What happened?" My question emerged as a demand, professional calm already giving way to parental fear. Ellen hesitated. "That HOA woman, Karen," she confronted Alex when he was walking Bella. "She had some kind of device. She put it on Bella's collar and, James," she shocked the dog, right in front of Alex. My vision tunneled momentarily as her words registered. "She did what?" "She shocked Bella with some kind of training collar. Alex had a panic attack, a bad one. I was gardening and heard the commotion. I got them both home, but they are very shaken up. Bella is hiding under the coffee table and will not come out. Alex cannot stop crying." I was already moving toward my car, barking orders over my shoulder to my bewildered deputy about handling the trafficking case. "Call Dr. Winters," I instructed Ellen. "Her number is on the fridge. She is Alex's therapist. Tell her what happened and ask if she can come to the house. I am 15 minutes away." The drive home passed in a blur of barely controlled fury and rising panic. 15 years investigating crimes against minors had exposed me to humanity's worst impulses. But this deliberate cruelty against my own child struck a primal chord I had never experienced. I forced myself to slow down as I turned onto our street. Alex needed his father now, not an avenging vigilante. Professional control reasserted itself partly out of habit, partly out of necessity. Assess the situation, gather facts, document everything, protect the victims, address the perpetrator. The familiar protocol steadied me as I pulled into our driveway. Ellen met me at the front door, her face grim. Dr. Winters is on her way. Alex is in the living room. I gave him water and his anxiety medication. The scene in our living room seared itself permanently into my memory. Alex sat on the floor beside the coffee table, his back against the couch, tears streaming silently down his face. His breathing came in irregular gasps, the aftermath of a severe panic attack. Under the coffee table, Bella remained curled into a tight ball, visibly trembling, her usual confident demeanor replaced by unmistakable fear. I knelt slowly beside my son, careful not to make sudden movements that might startle either him or Bella. "Hey, buddy, I am here now. You are safe." Alex looked up, his face crumpling with fresh tears. "She hurt Bella, Dad. She just walked up and shocked her. Bella did not do anything wrong. We were just walking on the sidewalk." I know, I soothed, carefully putting my arm around his shoulders. "Tell me exactly what happened when you are ready." Between shuddering breaths, Alex recounted how Karen had confronted them on the community path, demanding they leave immediately. When Alex explained it was a service animal and showed her Bella's vest, Karen had produced what looked like a small black remote and collar. She said she was trained in animal control methods and that she was authorized by the HOA to use approved correction techniques, Alex explained. She just grabbed Bella and put this thing around her neck, over her regular collar. Then she pressed a button and Bella yelped and fell down. She kept pressing it, Dad. She kept hurting her. Ellen filled in the rest from her perspective. "I heard the dog yelping and Alex shouting. By the time I got there, Karen was standing over them with some kind of remote control thing in her hand, lecturing about teaching proper respect for rules. Alex was already having a panic attack. I told Karen to leave immediately or I would call the police. She said something about having HOA authority and walked away. I got them both home as quickly as I could." Throughout the account, my professional mind cataloged elements of assault, animal cruelty, and violations of disability protection laws. But it was the small black device still attached to Bella's collar that focused my attention most acutely. I reached slowly under the table. "It is okay, girl. I'm just going to take this off you," I murmured, gently removing the shock collar. Bella whimpered but didn't snap, a testament to her training even in distress. The collar had small metal prongs designed to deliver an electric shock against the animal's neck. It was the type used in training difficult dogs, not a humane device in any circumstance, and certainly not something to be forcibly placed on a service animal. The doorbell rang, announcing Dr. Winters' arrival. As Ellen went to let her in, I examined the shock collar more closely. It had a manufacturer name and serial number. Evidence. The investigator in me automatically began building a case even as the father in me struggled with an almost overwhelming urge for immediate retribution. Dr. Winters entered and immediately went to Alex, her calm professional manner a stabilizing presence. She glanced at me over Alex's head, taking in my expression. "James, why do not you step outside for a few minutes while I work with Alex? Ellen can help me with Bella." She was right. Alex needed calm support now, not the barely contained fury I could feel radiating from my own body. I stepped onto our front porch, the shock collar clutched in my hand, and took several deep breaths of evening air. The peaceful neighborhood I had chosen for my son now seemed like a battlefield, and Karen Simpson had just committed an act of war. My training did not prepare me for this. 15 years investigating crimes against juveniles had taught me to compartmentalize, to separate emotion from procedure. But standing on my porch, holding the shock collar that had been forcibly attached to my son's service dog, I found that separation nearly impossible to maintain. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to walk directly to Karen Simpson's perfectly landscaped home and confront her with the same ferocity she had shown my son. I wanted her to understand the fear she had caused, to experience even a fraction of the violation Alex and Bella had endured. Instead, I called my office. "Jennifer, I need you to log an incident," I said to my assistant, my voice unnaturally controlled. "I will be taking emergency family leave, effective immediately. Forward any critical division matters to Deputy Director Matheson." I ended the call and returned inside, professional protocols guiding me when emotional restraint threatened to falter. Document everything. Create a record. Build a case. Dr. Winters had coaxed Alex to the couch, where he sat with Bella finally beside him, though the dog remained unnaturally still, her usual attentiveness replaced by a vigilant wariness I had never before observed. The therapist gave me a nod as I entered, indicating Alex was stabilizing. "I need to ask you some questions, Alex," I said, sitting across from them. "Just like we would for any incident report. Are you okay to talk about what happened?" Alex nodded, his hand resting protectively on Bella's head. "I want her to pay for what she did, Dad." "She will," I promised, "but we need to do this right." Over the next hour, I recorded Alex's statement, taking careful notes about every detail: the time, location, Karen's exact words, her actions, and the aftermath. Ellen provided her witness statement as well, her account corroborating Alex's in all key aspects. I photographed the shock collar from multiple angles, documenting the model number and settings. It had been set to the highest stimulation level, a setting that would cause significant pain even to a large dog. The thought made my hands shake with renewed anger. Dr. Winters examined Bella gently, noting areas of sensitivity around her neck where the prongs had made contact. "She will need a veterinary checkup," she advised. "Service dogs are carefully trained to maintain specific behaviors. An experience like this could create lasting behavioral issues that might affect her ability to perform her duties." This observation opened yet another dimension of harm, not just the immediate cruelty, but potential long-term damage to the specially trained animal, my son, relied upon for both physical assistance and emotional regulation. After Dr. Winters left with a prescription for mild sedatives for Alex and a recommendation for a service dog rehabilitation specialist, I made my next decision. I installed our rarely used home security system and set up additional cameras covering our front yard and the street approach. "Are we in danger, Dad?" Alex asked, watching me adjust the new camera. "No," I assured him, though my actions suggested otherwise. "I am just making sure we have documentation if there are any further incidents." I spent that night sleeping on the couch, unwilling to be far from Alex and Bella. By morning, I had formulated a plan of action that balanced professional procedure with parental protection. First, I arranged for Alex to stay with my sister for the weekend, taking Bella with him. The geographic distance would provide immediate safety and time for both to begin recovery. Then I contacted our family attorney to draft cease and desist letters and begin preparation for potential legal action. Only after these protective measures were in place did I allow myself to confront Karen Simpson directly. I waited until Saturday morning, when I knew she conducted her weekly community standards inspection walks. She appeared precisely on schedule, clipboard in hand, polo shirt crisp, eyes already scanning for violations. She stiffened visibly when she noticed me approaching but maintained her practiced expression of authoritative disapproval. "Mr. Harrington, the board is still reviewing your service animal documentation," she began before I could speak. "Until that process is complete—" "Ms. Simpson," I interrupted calmly, "I am here to inform you that you are the subject of multiple investigations. Your actions on Thursday constitute assault on a disabled minor, animal cruelty, violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and harassment." Karen's expression shifted from surprise to indignation. I was enforcing community guidelines using approved methods. The board has authorized me to use appropriate measures for animal control within Maple Creek properties. Her complete lack of remorse struck me with almost physical force. In my career, I had interviewed countless perpetrators who similarly justified their actions through distorted interpretations of authority or rules. You placed an electric shock collar on a service animal and repeatedly activated it in the presence of a disabled teenager who subsequently experienced a severe panic attack, I stated, each word precise and measured. "These actions have been documented and witnessed. I strongly advise you to retain legal counsel." Karen's expression hardened. "The HOA has legal representation, Mr. Harrington. Perhaps you do not understand how things work here in Maple Creek. We have procedures for residents who cannot abide by community standards. And I have procedures for adults who assault minors and their service animals," I replied evenly. "Assault, that is ridiculous. I was performing my duties as HOA president," Karen scoffed. "Who exactly do you think you are?" The moment had arrived. I reached slowly into my pocket and removed my professional identification, holding it where she could clearly read it. "I am James Harrington, Director of the Juvenile Crimes Division for this county. And you, Ms. Simpson, have committed multiple crimes against my son." For a brief moment, Karen's facade cracked, genuine fear flashing across her features before her practiced indignation reasserted itself. "This is intimidation. You cannot use your position to threaten me over a neighborhood dispute." "This ceased to be a neighborhood dispute the moment you assaulted my son and his service animal," I replied, returning my ID to my pocket. "Expect contact from multiple agencies in the coming days." As I walked away, I could feel her eyes boring into my back. The confrontation had provided no satisfaction, only confirmation of what I had already suspected. Karen Simpson believed entirely in her righteous authority, regardless of law or ethics. That made her dangerous, and confirmed that professional channels, not personal retribution, were indeed the appropriate response. The case was now officially open. The machinery of justice moves deliberately, methodically, and often more slowly than those seeking it might wish. Over 15 years in the Juvenile Crimes Division, I had explained this reality to countless families desperate for resolution. Now I found myself on the other side, simultaneously navigating and activating the very systems I had spent my career mastering. Monday morning began with a meeting at the office of Diane Chen, a disability rights attorney whose reputation for both legal precision and uncompromising advocacy had earned her the nickname Bulldozer among her peers. I had worked with her on several juvenile cases involving disabled victims, and her expertise now proved invaluable. "We are looking at multiple violations here," Diane confirmed, reviewing my carefully organized documentation. "Assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act, potential violations of the Fair Housing Act, and animal cruelty charges. I want to pursue all available channels," I told her. "Criminal, civil, regulatory, all of it." Diane looked at me carefully. "Because this is your son, you need to be especially careful about how your position intersects with this case. You cannot be personally involved in any criminal investigation." "I understand. I have already contacted the district attorney's office and requested a special assignment to avoid any appearance of conflict." She nodded approvingly. "Good. Now let us talk about immediate protections." By that afternoon, we had filed for restraining orders against Karen Simpson on behalf of both Alex and Bella, documented the incident with animal control authorities, and lodged formal complaints with the Department of Housing and Urban Development regarding ADA violations within the HOA regulations. I also contacted Service Animal Rights Coalition, a national advocacy organization that specialized in cases of discrimination against service animal handlers. Their expertise would ensure that the unique aspects of Bella's training and certification were properly represented in all documentation. As the legal mechanics began turning, I activated my professional network with surgical precision. A call to Captain Reyes at the police department ensured that the assault report received proper attention rather than being dismissed as a neighborhood dispute. A conversation with Judge Martinez, who had presided over many of my division's cases, helped fast-track the restraining order hearing. By Wednesday, the first legal documents were delivered to Karen Simpson's door by a process server: a formal notice of the restraining order hearing, copies of the complaints filed with regulatory agencies, and Diane Chen's letter outlining the impending civil action. That evening, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. "Mr. Harrington, this is Richard Blanchard, legal counsel for the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association." The voice was smooth, professional, with the practiced calm of an experienced corporate attorney. "I understand there have been some unfortunate events involving our HOA president. I was hoping we might discuss resolution options before this escalates further." "Mr. Blanchard, my son was assaulted. His service animal was physically abused, and both continue to experience trauma from the incident," I replied evenly. "Additionally, I have documented numerous violations of federal disability protections in your HOA regulations. What exactly did you have in mind by way of resolution?" The attorney cleared his throat. "The board is prepared to issue a formal apology and revisit any regulations that might not align with federal guidelines. Ms. Simpson has offered to step down temporarily while this matter is reviewed internally." "That is wholly insufficient," I stated flatly. "The unfortunate events, as you call them, constitute multiple criminal and civil violations. This is not an internal HOA matter. Ms. Simpson is facing criminal charges, civil litigation, and regulatory investigations. I suggest you advise your client accordingly." "Mr. Harrington," his voice took on an edge of warning, "pursuing this aggressively could result in protracted legal battles that benefit no one. Mr. Blanchard, I spent 15 years building and prosecuting cases against those who harm children. I oversee a division dedicated solely to juvenile justice. Do you really believe I am intimidated by the prospect of legal proceedings?" The silence that followed, suggested he was recalculating his approach. I would be happy to meet with the full HOA board to discuss the comprehensive changes needed to bring your regulations into compliance with federal law, I continued. That would be constructive, but the criminal and civil actions against Ms. Simpson will proceed regardless. After ending the call, I received a text message from Ellen. Karen Simpson had been served with the restraining order notice and was currently standing on her front lawn, phone in hand, her face flushed with anger as she apparently argued with someone on the other end. The legal machinery was now fully engaged, its gears meshing with the inexorable force of well-established processes and procedures. Karen Simpson was about to learn that while HOA regulations might be subject to capricious interpretation, federal law protecting disabled minors and their service animals was not. For the first time since the incident, I felt the tight knot of anger in my chest begin to loosen, replaced by the cold satisfaction of professional certainty. Justice would not be immediate, but it would be thorough. The notification for the emergency HOA meeting arrived in every mailbox in Maple Creek, estates exactly 10 days after the incident. The sterile language cited urgent community matters requiring immediate attention and review of leadership conduct. But the neighborhood grapevine had already spread the true nature of the gathering. What surprised me most was how quickly isolation transformed into solidarity. The day after the meeting notices appeared, Ellen Mackenzie knocked on our door with a chocolate cake and something more valuable, information. "James, people are talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time," she said, settling at our kitchen table while Alex and a still subdued Bella rested in the living room. "Thomas Miller called me yesterday. Karen cited him 3 times last month for his home oxygen equipment being visible from the street. He is 82 and can barely breathe without it." Ellen lowered her voice. "And the Rodriguez family, their son has autism, and Karen threatened them with fines when they installed a specialized swing in their backyard, said it violated the aesthetic continuity clause. They have been afraid to fight back because Mr. Rodriguez is still working on his citizenship application." Similar stories emerged throughout the week. The Patels had been harassed about cooking odors from traditional Indian meals. The Johnston family had received violation notices when their daughter was undergoing chemotherapy, and they could not maintain their lawn to Karen's standards. Each case followed the same pattern: Karen targeting vulnerable residents with selective enforcement and intimidation, twisting HOA regulations into weapons against those least able to defend themselves. On the night of the meeting, Alex insisted on attending despite my concerns about his still fragile emotional state. "I need to be there, Dad," he said with quiet determination. "I need them to see me and Bella. I need them to know what she did to us." The community center was packed, tension evident in the rigid postures and hushed conversations that fell silent when Karen entered, clipboard in hand as always. She took her usual seat at the head table, flanked by board members whose discomfort was palpable. Richard Blanchard, the HOA attorney, called the meeting to order with visible reluctance. "We are here to address several community concerns," he began diplomatically. "Recent events have raised questions about the application of our regulations and leadership conduct." Before he could continue, Thomas Miller stood up, supporting himself on an aluminum walker. "I want to speak," he announced, his voice thin but determined. "For 2 years I have been harassed by Karen Simpson about my medical equipment. I fought in Korea. I paid my taxes for 60 years. I should not have to hide the oxygen I need to breathe." His statement opened the floodgates. One by one, residents rose to share their experiences. Maria Rodriguez described how her family had been targeted for excessive cultural decorations during Hispanic holidays. The Patel family detailed the humiliating inspections of their home after complaints about cooking odors. With each testimony, Karen's expression shifted from indignation to alarm as she witnessed her carefully constructed authority crumbling. She repeatedly tried to interject with references to community standards and property values, but each attempt was met with growing hostility from the assembled residents. When it was Alex's turn to speak, the room fell completely silent. He walked slowly to the front, Bella beside him providing subtle support with her trained gait matching his uneven steps. I followed a few paces behind, ready to assist if needed, but determined to let him speak for himself. "My name is Alex Harrington," he began, his voice initially soft but gathering strength. "2 weeks ago, Karen Simpson put an electric shock collar on my service dog Bella and repeatedly shocked her while I watched." He paused, steadying himself with a hand on Bella's back. "Bella helps me walk when my muscles do not cooperate. She alerts me before I have seizures. She provides pressure therapy when I have anxiety attacks, like the one I had when she was being hurt right in front of me." Alex looked directly at Karen. "I already knew I was different. I have known that my whole life, but I never felt unsafe in my own neighborhood until that day. I still have nightmares about the sound Bella made when she was shocked. She still flinches sometimes when strangers approach us." The room remained utterly silent as Alex continued. "My dad works every day to protect kids who are hurt by adults who abuse their power. I never thought I would become one of those kids." When Alex finished, the emotional atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. What had begun as individual grievances had coalesced into collective outrage. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances, visibly processing the public relations disaster unfolding before them. Karen attempted to regain control, standing to address the room. "These accusations are being greatly exaggerated," she insisted. "As HOA president, I have a responsibility to maintain standards that preserve our property values and community aesthetics. Sometimes that requires difficult enforcement actions." Her words fell flat in the charged atmosphere. Board member Claire Daniels, who had remained silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current HOA president," she announced. "And I further move that we begin a comprehensive review of all regulations for compliance with federal housing and disability laws." The vote that followed was decisive. Karen Simpson was removed from her position by a margin that left no room for procedural challenges. The board approved the creation of a new inclusive standards committee that would include representatives from families with disabilities, seniors, and multicultural households. As the meeting concluded, residents clustered around Alex, offering support and apologies for not speaking up sooner. Bella, still somewhat subdued but responsive to the positive attention, accepted gentle pats from community members who had previously averted their eyes when passing. Walking home that evening, Alex reached for my hand, something he had not done in public since early adolescence. "Did we win, Dad?" he asked quietly. "This part, yes," I replied, watching Bella walk with slightly more confidence beside him. "The community stood up for what is right. That is an important victory." What I did not add was that the legal proceedings were just beginning. Community justice was meaningful, but formal accountability still awaited Karen Simpson in the courts. 6 months passed before Karen Simpson stood before Judge Martinez in the county courthouse. The intervening period had been filled with depositions, evidence reviews, and procedural hearings, the methodical process of justice that tests the patience of even those familiar with its rhythms.